Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. The power for electric vehicles in North Carolina is charging up. The first batteries at Toyota's plant here are rolling off the line. WRAL's Grace Holland was one of the only journalists in the Triangle to take a tour of the assembly floor and is here to talk about what she saw. Grace, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Lewis. It was a really fun day when we did this on Wednesday.
Yeah, so tell me about it. How did you end up on this tour? How did this come together?
Yeah, so our anchor, Ashley Rowe, actually approached me about this. She had been talking back and forth with Toyota's team, and I believe they had reached out to her and said, hey, we're going to be offering these tours. Would you like to come? Now, the thing about it is they were not going to allow cameras on the tour, which when you're a TV station, that's what you want. You want to be able to bring in your own camera. Now, I will say Toyota did send us B-roll of the facility. The reason why they didn't want us to bring cameras was because they have some proprietary information. You know, they don't want their competitors seeing, oh, they do that a different way. We should try that. So there's a good reason. And so Ashley approached me for two reasons. One, I used to work in the Greensboro area. This plant is in Liberty, North Carolina. That's Randolph County, right across the Guilford County line, which is where Greensboro is. I covered this plant from whenever we first got whispers that it was going to be a deal and that they were going to build there. So I'm very, very familiar with this whole endeavor that's been going on there. And then the other reason was because of the podcast. She was like, well, maybe you can record some audio of the tour.
Look at that.
Yeah.
How you mentioned covering this from like the very beginning of the process. How long has this process been going on?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of deep lore with Toyota and the Greensboro Randolph megasite, which is where this ended up being. It's sort of like a property that companies could potentially buy and then put their industrial space into. So actually, back in 2018, there was efforts in the area to bring a Toyota car manufacturing plant there. Those failed, and actually that plant went to Huntsville, Alabama. So and then in 2021 is when this battery manufacturing plant came. And it's a big deal because this is Toyota's first electric car battery manufacturing plant and only still battery manufacturing plant outside of Japan.
Wow.
And so all of the batteries that are made there, I think it's 80% of them go to their manufacturing facilities in the U.S. and North America as a whole. So a big deal. At the time, there was a lot of conversation about like, well, you know, electric cars are the future, so maybe we kind of got the better deal here getting the battery plant over the car manufacturing plant. So it's been quite a journey for sure.
Yeah, sounds like it. Speaking of the journey itself, touring through this plant, what did you see? What was that like?
Yeah, so I'll start with, I have not been out to the site where this was since before they even started construction. I mean, maybe early stages in 2022. I don't quite remember. But the last memory I have of this place, it was just an open field with a road beside it. So that was the first thing when I pulled up. I mean, the road is like 4 lanes now. There's highway signs. You come in there, there's all these big, shiny new, relatively new buildings that are built. Big warehouses, basically, is what you should think about with this. So I went to the main building, and, we went in. It was me, and I think there were several groups of journalists. I think in my group there, I would say there's about 10 of us. There was also, they were offering these tours to a lot of international media. There were a lot of journalists from Japan who were also taking these tours. So there were groups of us. In my group, it was, anyone from Central North Carolina. So a lot of Greensboro journalists in that group. And, they gave us a badge. Okay, so I am all checked in at Toyota, and we are about to go on the tour. And also we'll have to wear a special suit and goggles as we're on the manufacturing floor. So I will check in later. I'm going to be taking old-fashioned notes on this one. We went to a room where they had different PPE. Obviously, with a facility, what they're trying to do is keep contamination out of the factory floor.
Yeah.
So it's not like medical PPE, like what you may think of in like a bio lab setting or something like that, or a hospital. But, they had, first of all, they gave us work boots temporarily.
Nice.
Yeah, so had some thick work boots on. They gave us shoe covers for those. They gave us hair nets. goggles. There's a picture I posted on my Instagram of the full fit. I thought it was going to be a full suit. They did not give us a full suit.
Dang.
I know.
No hazmat.
Yeah. No. There were parts of the facility where people do wear like a full, body suit type thing. We just didn't. We could see those through a window, but we did not go into those. And as we were walking in, one thing that was important was they kept telling us, like, don't put the shoe coverings on until we tell you to, because they didn't want, as we're walking to the floor, to get like dirt on those. So we get into this like locker room, which the lockers had stuff from employees, so I'm assuming that's where they also suit up every day.
All right, Grace?
Yes.
Okay, so you're our last one, I believe.
And they said, okay, you can sit on this bench. There's this yellow line. Sit down on the bench. Your feet come off the floor. Put the shoe coverings on. And then without putting your feet back on the floor, swing your legs around across the yellow line, and then you can put them down.
That's fascinating.
Isn't that so crazy?
That is fascinating.
Yeah, they were like very specific about it.
That yellow line, really high tech,
Yeah.
guarding there.
Yeah, for sure. So it was just really that's what really stood out is the way that the safety and cross contamination, they took that very seriously, and then you step into the actual factory.
All right, I think we are ready. All right, our first stop is going to be Manish at cell front.
And it's very bright in there. There's sort of like a mechanical whirring. It wasn't like too loud. You could certainly hear people talking to you. No smell. Sometimes when you think about industrial places, you might have sort of like, I don't know, an oil smell or something. No smell. No, I was surprised that and now I also had on like a pretty heavy blazer. But it felt kind of warm in there. I feel like sometimes you step into those kind of spaces and it's cold because they got to keep the machinery cool. But
right. Now, you've done a good job kind of building up this image of this factory. And when we think of car factories, you tend to think of like the classic stuff in like Detroit where it's assembly lines and all this. But these are batteries that are being built. So how was that process? How are these batteries built?
Yeah. So, I still think the general image of an assembly line is accurate. They're just not maybe to the scale that you would think of when you've seen these images of cars, whole car chassis like moving down. It's not like that. The batteries is actually interesting. The main component of a battery, like there's several of them in there, but they're about the size of your phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like for the whole car?
Not for the whole car. So it's like the components. We'll get into this, but there's a lot of like nitpicky things.
Okay.
But it's like there's several of these like cell phone sized things within a component that then powers your car.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. But it's still, so like what they're initially building is like pretty small.
Yeah.
And so they have like a couple different like parts of the assembly line. Let me refer to my notes here.
Yes, please.
Because I'll be honest, that is like the one thing I wrote down like during the tour is like there's a lot of terminology here, and
right.
We do our best as journalists to try to break things down, but there's people that are engineers doing this.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there's basically the materials, they assemble them into a cell, which, like I said, that's that cell phone sized piece.
Okay.
That's broken up into a couple different areas. And there's one line where I think they're, putting the materials in there.
We have our electrode material that's bound up into a core and pressed and inserted into a can. Very skilled team members are involved in this running of these machines. And then we got to seal it. So it's welded shut, so there's no contamination at all going inside the cell. So the cell then goes further. After this, then there are a bunch of inspection processes that we do to make sure that the weld is done correctly.
And then they go to another part of that, and they're adding wet and dry materials into
It's a
the
cell
battery.
rear. We're actually going to do a vacuum drying process to remove all moisture that remains in the cell. So once we dry the cell, again, we're doing this preparation so we can insert our electrolyte chemical, and adding that electrolyte to the coated material that's already been put into the can in our prior process allows all that chemical interaction to happen so that our batteries can perform properly.
These are the things like that I think start the chemical reaction to then make those batteries have a charge, right? So then from there, so those are two separate lines. They go to formation, where they take several of these cell phone size pieces, put them together, and kind of put them, it looks like a pallet is like the easiest, like what you would think. Like they're kind of stacked up and they're on the floor. That is an open area. These assembly line areas, that's where the people have the big suits on, and we were looking at that through a window, you know. But this, it's like out on the floor, and they're letting them have these chemical reactions.
After it's waiting for a period of time for the chemical reaction to begin, what you see behind you is the heat process. We add some heat to the process to allow more chemical reactions.
They let that sit for a period of time, and then they have like an inspection phase.
The batteries themselves, are they going in like EVs? Are they going in hybrids? What are we looking at?
Yes. So right now the batteries, the ones that I saw are going into Toyota's hybrid cars. They will at a certain point start doing fully battery electric cars as well. Those just, I think, take a little bit more power. And then also plug-in hybrids, which is sort of like a middle ground. Like obviously when we think of a hybrid car, traditionally, you're thinking about one that it runs on gas, that then charges up the battery a little bit, right? But there's also a version, they do still plug in. They're just not fully battery dependent.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's go and take a quick break there. When we come back, we're going to dig into what all of this means for North Carolina. You're listening to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Luis Fernandez. We are talking Toyota's first battery plant outside of Japan. It is right here in North Carolina in Liberty, just outside of Greensboro. Grace Holland is here talking about it after going on a tour. Grace, you mentioned that this whole timeline, this process, goes back to 2021. You covered it when you were previously in Greensboro. Things have changed a lot in the car industry, in the electric vehicle industry, with these batteries powering cars like that.
Right.
How have things changed? How did officials address those political changes?
Yeah, right. And it is. It's economic changes. It's political changes. Just to set the scene, refresh your brain to 2021. Obviously, we were post-pandemic. That's a totally different landscape to begin with. But also, we had Democratic governor here, Roy Cooper, and we had a Democratic president, Joe Biden. And Biden had put a lot of things into place, like tax credits for people who bought EVs and different incentives like that. It was just generally a friendlier economic situation for electric vehicles. And it was in that time that this plant came to be. So it is really interesting, right? Because now President Trump, in the last couple months, got rid of that EV tax credit for people who are buying cars. And a lot of the incentives in general have gone away under his administration. Tariffs also, you got to think about it. Toyota is a Japanese company. So anything that they're sending over or making in Japan and sending here, or making here and sending to Japan, there's going to be tariffs that they have to deal with. So it's an interesting change there. And one thing I was really interested in, we knew that a cabinet official was going to be speaking at this Toyota event after the tour. It ended up being Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. I was like, how are you going to approach this? In my head, I'm thinking, what's the message going to be? And what he focused on was, these are American-made cars. Toyota is making these batteries here, and then 80% of them are ending up in Toyota plants around the country. Mostly these batteries are going to Kentucky and Alabama right now. They're trialing some to go to Canada as well. So, they were really focusing on the American-made piece of it and saying, there is a market for hybrid cars, especially in the U.S. So that was really the focus. And then when I talked we had a roundtable over lunch of barbecue with Toyota executives. And, there were a lot of questions about the economic situation, because the fact of the matter is EVs, having lost that tax credit, it is more expensive to buy. Also, the market, people buying EVs has gone down in the last couple of years. That had already started to decline before some of these changes that President Trump put in place. And listen, buying a car in general is expensive.
It is.
You learned this recently.
As someone whose 2008 Hyundai Elantra died on him this year, it costs a good chunk of change.
Yeah, and my 2015 Honda CR-V, every day that I have her is a gift.
Cherish it.
Yes,
Cherish it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we just don't want to have to buy one right now. It's expensive. What Toyota was saying, what their message was, with all these changes with the EV market, their feeling is to follow what are people buying, right? So not just some other companies, they argued, have gone all in on EVs in the last few years, said we're just going to do fully electric cars, we're going to pump them out. Whereas Toyota says, like, that's not been our strategy.
So building locally here, it's for the vehicle plants, it's buying our batteries from our local internal sourcing so we can remain competitive and have economic affordability for our consumers. As the rising cost of automobiles gets out of pocket, we want to be both the employer of choice for people who work in North Carolina and all of our sites across North America, but also we stay close to our customers and we want to make sure that for families, they have affordability to be able to have mobility.
First of all, the main market in the U.S. is hybrids, so we make more hybrids. That's what we're building at this factory right now. We are going to build these other things, but their numbers, like target numbers, are lower. Like the battery electric vehicles, they want to get it to a point where they can make up to 45,000 on a line. The plug-in hybrids I talked about earlier, they want to get up to 75,000. So that shows you the difference in like what they're prioritizing. And they say that's all based on, well, what are people buying?
So a Japanese car made in the U.S.,
right,
powered by North Carolina
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah, right.
So how does North Carolina benefit from all of this?
Yeah.
Is this going to be, a huge economic success in the future? What was the idea there?
Yeah, so when I asked Toyota executives pretty much that exact question, what they told me was that this is an investment that pays off over time. Obviously, this factory is very new.
It takes time to get the capacity up to where we want it to be. So in that time, the costs obviously are greater per unit than it will be. So I think the benefit to the consumer happens longer in this plant's life cycle when depreciate some of the costs over more volume and over a long period of time.
I mean, this was a $14 billion facility that Toyota built.
With a B, as in
With a B.
Bravo.
Yeah. What they said is also, because they're focusing on what cars are people buying, Toyota has continued to sell a lot of passenger cars, the Camry, the Priuses, all those, versus other companies that have moved a lot to like SUVs and trucks being their main selling item, and those are more expensive to buy. So part of it is, well, the cars that we just make anyway are more affordable. But then also, if you think about, okay, over time, you're making the batteries here. You're not having to pay tariff costs if those continue to be a thing. You're not having to deal with just the logistics of shipping. It's a little bit easier to send it. So the argument was that. And then also, Toyota plans to continue to invest in that facility. Right now, they have about 2,000 employees, which is a significant amount of people who were not working, certainly in Liberty before that. And now they have a target of employing 5,000 people at that facility by 2034. So they're definitely continuing to ramp that up. There is also was announced on that same day that I took the tour that Toyota was going to invest an additional $10 billion in the U.S. What's not clear, and I asked, well, how much of that is going here? Do you know if any of it is going here? And the official said, we don't know yet. But again, it's hard to imagine that something wouldn't.
Sure.
We just have to see what that's going to look like.
With the infrastructure there.
Right. And also, one more note, they also announced a $2.7 million actually, donation to the local school districts.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and they said that is because, the more that we invest in the education, they also have partnerships with NCA&T and some other schools in that area, the Community College, Guilford Tech. Yeah. So, I mean, they are seeing it like we're investing here, and these people, we're going to keep them in the community working long term.
All right. On the new Toyota electric battery plant in North Carolina, that is Grace Holland. Grace, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Luis Fernandez. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download, and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.
Late on that, so I'm just going to let it play out.